Hello everyone, it's Belladonna again and Madam Weepsy here to talk to you about the next album in our Skinny Puppy installment, the first full official release, Bites. Alright, so recorded in 1984 and 85 and released in 85, are still again by Nettwerk Records, we're really rolling now. Here you have Bites. This is an original copy release. You have only 9 songs on here, and of course there would be a re-release in 1993. There was also the compressed Bites in Remission, released I think in 87. Bites in Remission with different mixes of Assimilate, things like that on it. So at this point you have the very basic 9-song release. I'm going to cover all of the songs on the 93 CD release so we can sort of get everywhere. Now, here we have, of course, Mr. Kevin Key, the Wizard of Skinny Puppy, Mr. Nivek Ogre, the Warlock of Skinny Puppy. How can we forget them? Mr. Key, of course, is the nerve center, the backbone, whatever you want to call it, the brain of Skinny Puppy. Mr. Ogre is the voice, the heart of darkness of Skinny Puppy. And, of course, you have Mr. Wilhelm Schroeder again, of Frontline Assembly, Mr. Lieb himself. Alright, so we're going to get into the tracks. Now, of course, we have Rot and Assimilate. Assimilate. Do I really need to say a great deal about Assimilate? Another one of their most known tracks. Another run to the dance floor track. Assimilate, as soon as you hear that coming, and you hear Mr. Ogre growling into the microphone, my God, that is an experience alone. I still remember when I first heard that. I don't even know how to really describe the feelings I get from some of the music, but to hear Assimilate for the first time, and to actually feel your body start to move with it, and again that wonderful stream of consciousness singing that hits you left and right. Everything about Assimilate is perfect. I don't really need to tell you a great deal more than that. Now, of course, one thing I loved about Assimilate is, of course, the sample of Is It Safe? That is, of course, from the film Marathon Man with Roy Scheider and Dustin Hoffman and the great Sir Laurence Olivier. And that is him saying, as he's in the dentist's chair with his drill, is it safe? Really, it's just something that sort of sticks with you. I didn't know at the time, I was a child at the time, that was the film it was from. And you know how it is when you see a film with a Skinny Puppy sample and you're like, oh my God, whatever, because it's kind of silly. But all you really need is that sample and Mr. Ogre screaming death, 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 and so forth. That doesn't get much better than that. So moving on to the song Dead Lines. Now I think, sort of like Remission, we have a very strange kind of progression that actually does make sense. Assimilate is like the ultimate dance song. However, you get into Deadlines, and I think immediately with Deadlines you slip into the darkness. Just like before, as the progression on Remission is, you slip into the darkness of Deadlines. And Deadlines goes deep and dark from the driving forces of Assimilate. I still remember Deadlines sort of, when I first heard that, it sort of took me into like the basement of darkness. It just took me down there. And the lines, of course, with Ogre's stream of consciousness, it's not always that easy to interpret everything he's saying, and of course, a lot of it is left up to you. For me, when I was very young, it was the line, all is nothing less, rather you look me in the eye. Now, when I say it that way, it doesn't sound very interesting, but of course, the way Mr. Ogre sings it struck me as something deeply and darkly poetic. So we've gone from rotting and assimilating into the Deadlines. Perhaps they're telling us a sort of horror story again, I don't know. But here we've gone from Assimilate and we've brought it down into the darkness. We're a little bit back and forth on these particular tracks, so bear with me a bit if we're out of order. If you don't like it, cry me a river. So, we're going into Blood on the Wall. As was pointed out to me, someone had said it's kind of like Stairs and Flowers. And I do see the similarity in them, and I actually think it's really cool. Blood on the Wall, there are, I believe, these samples of film screams in there. I'm not exactly sure where that's from, but there's a lot of it going on in there. And there are wonderful sounds surrounding it, Mr. Ogre's beautiful lyrics. It's another one that takes you in a very different direction, down into this weird sort of noise darkness. I think here you're hearing a great noise track. Just so many things crushed together in there. I think you're starting to hear the beginning of that sort of Skinny Puppy, even though Mr. Gotel has not shown up yet. The Master Gotel. You're starting to get that with Blood on the Wall. Now, on this particular version, you have Icebreaker, which we talked about in Remission. Icebreaker. So I don't need to get into that again. If you missed it, go back and watch my video. Icebreaker, though, still a wonderful song. Then we have, of course, Film again, which was on Remission as well. Film, remember, the sound of it is like the actual film projector. Just listen to it, think of, look at a video or an actual film projector, and think about that for a moment. Film. The wonderful song, Church. And as we all know,
Church in Hell.
It has that wonderful sort of crying in the background. It's all from the Legend of Hell House, of course. The wonderful repetitious, I believe that's Roddy McDowell's voice, correct me if I'm wrong, please, saying Church in Hell. The crying noise, I assume, is from that as well. I could be wrong. It's wonderful because now you're seeing you went from a very noise-oriented track to a very beat and repetition-oriented track. It is one that I think sticks in my head and any fan's head. It's that repetition. Church in Hell. It just keeps happening, and that crying song. Church in Hell. Very simple in its own right, I suppose. But that sort of thing sticks with you. Church in Hell. So moving on, we have the song Tomorrow. So Tomorrow is another one that I think has a very similar quality to the song Film. It sort of seems to be telling you a sort of tale as that beat, that sound moves on. And Tomorrow sort of just has the, I don't know how to explain this, it sounds very stupid. Tomorrow sounds like tomorrow. When I was very young and I would listen to this album a lot, I would hear the song Tomorrow and I would be dreading the next day, and it was just tomorrow. It was telling me about tomorrow. I don't know if that makes any sense. If it doesn't, that's all right. You don't have to worry about me. But tomorrow is just tomorrow. Listen to it. Think of it for yourself. You tell me what you think. Alright, so moving on to Dead Doll. Now, Dead Doll is another one. It's, I think, very simple by comparison to others. Well, the only lyric I believe is Dead Doll. Now, Dead Doll, I suppose you could interpret that however you wish. I still think, especially of course if you're listening to the 93 release, that you're getting taken on a journey. Take it as you wish. I know where my brain was going and it went mad. Dead Doll is just another great, catchy in its own right, strange progression. I don't know the meaning behind it or anything. I have been to the Heidelberg project in Detroit where there are numerous, you could argue, dead dolls everywhere. And I have put that song over little videos. I do Dead Doll, Dead Doll. It's just Dead Doll. You want me to explain things I can't explain? Ask Mr. Key, ask Mr. Ogre. Dead Doll. I don't have an answer, I just know it's awesome. And then moving on to the next track, which is another song with one lyric. And that lyric is love. The song is love. The word love, through Mr. Ogre's wonderful distortion, is repeated. And it's possible that in some cases, listening, you may not even realize what he's saying, because the more the word is repeated in succession, any word repeated like that becomes almost nonsensical and meaningless. Perhaps that is the meaning. The meaning of love is that repetition, the nonsense that it becomes, and, perhaps falls apart in the end. I don't know. But love just keeps repeating in that bizarre distortion of his. And you have again Hell House samples. The wonderful part where the young lady is a little bit possessed, I suppose, and talking rather dirty. Very beautiful when you listen to it. The repetition of love, the nonsensical lyric of love, the way the music actually builds to a strange crescendo around the young lady's samples from Hell House. Simple and deeply, darkly beautiful. I tried to play that for someone I had strong feelings for before. Yeah, that didn't go very far. You know, somebody for everybody, I suppose. Alright, next we're going to move on to Social Deception. Social Deception. Another very noise-oriented stream of consciousness, of course, track. It's a very unusual one to describe. There's no real good way, I think, to describe most Skinny Puppy songs. You just have to listen. So if you know this song, you probably know what I'm talking about, and if you don't know it, listen to Social Deception. Interesting if you look at it this way, social deception could be something you could apply to, dare I say it, social media nowadays. I don't know. Interpret it in your own way. Read Mr. Ogre's lyrics, listen to them, decide for yourself what social deception is. Your mind will tell you a story. Social deception is one that sort of is a little bit after, especially if you're listening to the CD and after love, you go into social deception. Love, love, love. Social deception. Don't know. Social Deception, great track that I don't think gets enough attention in this day and age. People go back. Social Deception. The Choke. Now the Choke is, I would say, a quintessential Skinny Puppy song. Every fan has to love the Choke. If you don't, what are you thinking? As we know, it opens with the samples from Roman Polanski's The Tenant again. And you have the wonderful, wonderful samples. Even if you've not known the movie, you probably know the lines. If you cut off my head, what would I say? Me and my head, or me and my body? And of course, as it progresses, you have take out my stomach, my kidneys, assuming that were possible, and I'd say me and my intestines. But if you cut off my head, and so on, what right has my head to call itself me? Deep and crazy stuff. Stop and think about it. Now, of course, after the iconic Roman Polanski samples of The Tenant, you have the Nivek Ogre scream. This scream is, I believe, known as the most famous vocalization screaming in the industrial music world. This is, I think, a vocalization from Mr. Ogre that symbolizes everything that he is and does, everything about the music, this music, and every other music he's done. That scream almost sounds inhuman, unreal. I don't know if what they did in the sonic manipulations, doctoring, adding, I have no idea, I'm not a techie. But that scream haunts me, it haunts you, it haunts everyone who hears it, and it is incredibly beautiful. So when you hear the Choke, you know what's coming. If you cut off my head, what would I say? Me in my head or me in my body? And then the scream comes to you. The wail of pain and horror. Everything. The Choke, if you like. Mr. Ogre is a master of vocalizations in his fascinating and unique way. The Choke has so much going for it. The sound of it is danceable and the beat is amazing. Everything about the Choke. I think we're seeing here Skinny Puppy blossoming into its own with that very scream. I guess we'll find out soon enough. Alright, so the next song we're going to talk about is my favorite topic, Christianity. Christianity is a song through Skinny Puppy. Has a mix of their wonderful melodies and a lot of interesting sampling, and I'm not sure what that's all coming from. There's sounds that almost sound like talking, laughing, or bugs like flies buzzing, not entirely sure. Has a wonderful sound to it. I can tell you what I think about this Christianity and this song. I'm not going to, because I don't think it's appropriate. But stop and listen to the song Christianity and think about Christianity as a reality. And you tell me what you think. Because I know deep in my dark and sick, twisted heart what it means. I'd like to hear what you think it means, because I think, though, Christianity, appropriate sounding song. And moving on, we have the song Basement, another one with a lot of Legend of Hell House samplers in it. I know it sounds probably repetitious that I say, this song sounds exactly like what it means. This song sounds exactly like what it means. When I was young, we had a basement that had a very dark and sort of creepy, noisy staircase. that you'd have to walk down into, and I hated going down there as a child. I didn't really think the furnace was going to come alive and eat me, but you never know. So the song Basement brought that to my mind. Even though you could argue that it makes no sense to you, for me, I would think automatically of that dark, creaking staircase, and that smell, that mildew smell, and that furnace coming to life, the light that would come out of it. To me, it's like we're going down to the basement. It almost sounds like, though, instead of the horror of the basement, like I'm going down to fight the basement, conquer the basement, to go down and show the basement what is really scary, not the stupid furnace or whatever boogeyman lives beneath. Again, take your own interpretations. That's what art is for. But to me, basement almost sounded triumphant for me, listening to it as a younger person, and as the person I am now. But basement to me, it's basement. Moving on to Last Call, even though this will not be our last song to talk about. Last Call was the way of ending the original album. Last Call is another one that, sort of like with Remission, I think this final song on the original album at least wraps it up. It is your last call. Is that on purpose? Is that how they planned it? I don't know. I don't really believe in coincidence myself. And I know Mr. Key, Mr. Ogre are very, well, methodical about how they do things. I don't think things are done without meaning and purpose. I don't pretend to know their meaning and purpose. But I think Last Call was set up in a way to be the last call on the album, taking you on that journey, beginning with Rotting and Assimilating, moving on down, whether you're on the original album or on the subsequent releases. Your last call is your last call, and it seems to be wrapping it up for you. However, if you're a real fan, you know things do not end on the album. The song Falling is on the CD release. So the song Falling, okay, it's being repetitious now. It sounds like falling in a certain sense. In my mind, it was always conjuring the idea of falling from the sky, whether you parachuted or the Lord dropped you out or whatever, I don't know. Perhaps it's more of a falling in an internal way. Perhaps it has to do more with the mind, falling in whatever you believe falling is. I don't believe just falling on your bum, but there's something about it falling out of you, if that makes any sense. I know, I'm probably losing my mind, but falling sounds like film sounds like film. At that point, you are falling into something else, and you are falling into those final two tracks. Now, here we have the center bullet, spelled C-E-N-T-R-E on the skinny puppy version of it, we'll say. So the center bullet is an instrumental. There is a sort of sample lyric or something inside of it. I have never fully been able to identify what it is. I'm not even sure that it's an English word or anything. I don't know for certain. In my mind, as a child, I would listen to this song. This was a song I would often put on in the early morning dawn hours. In my troubled mind and life, I can recall sitting and looking out the window at the dawn and listening to the center bullet. What I heard was the word silencio. I was a child, mind you. Makes no sense. Many years later, I would see the David Lynch film Mulholland Drive, and silencio would become a new meaning for me. This makes no sense whatsoever. Give a child a break. But I would sit there and watch the dawn, fearing and waiting for the following day. And I would hear the center bullet, and it would seem that even in the midst of all the darkness I felt, oddly the song made me feel like I might live forever. Now I don't know why. I was very young. But the center bullet is an incredibly beautiful song. This is where you start to get, I think, seeing Mr. Key as a composer, if you like. Now the center bullet's interesting because it is also on the Tear Garden album. I believe it's Tired Eyes Slowly Burning. Tear Garden is, of course, a project with Mr. Key, Mr. Yotel, various different people, and Mr. Cospell, Edward Cospell. And it is given the different spelling of the word center, and it has Mr. Cospell singing lyrics over it. I had first heard a Skinny Puppy's version, of course, and then I heard the Tear Garden, and I thought, what is going on here? Have I fallen asleep and woken up in some strange universe? Why is Mr. Cospell singing on this? I like it, it's very nice. But it is very different, and it changes, I think, the internal narrative that you have of it when you have Mr. Cospell singing. Now, I don't think that one is necessarily better than the other. You just have a preference for it. I do draw to the original Skinny Puppy, if it is the original. I don't think that's ever been determined. But I don't necessarily say it's only the best. It is the one I'm drawn to. Now, check out both versions. I'll make my playlist with both versions for you. You tell me what you think. But it is undeniably an incredibly beautiful song. And again, symphonic. Composer. Mr. Key is the Mozart of the electronic world. Now, one more thing. As we go to not the album version here, but the CD release, we have a final track not listed on the notes, not listed anywhere, but pops up. One Day. One Day. Another instrumental. This is not exactly like any songs before it, not even the previous one I mentioned. Perhaps not like any song after. One Day is the hidden track, as it's known. Now, I don't know a great deal of background regarding this song, and I remember on the CD being very surprised when I first heard it all those years ago, thinking, oh, wait a minute, there's another song here. And it didn't seem to fit, but then it fit perfectly. One Day is not a very long song. Again, I don't know any background. If anyone has some for me, please let me know. One Day is another piece of symphonic work, but on a very calm and quiet level, a very sad, almost dreary level. I don't know why it was selected in this fashion, why it's the hidden track, why it's released on the CD in this way. I don't know the background, as I say. One Day sort of tapers off at the end. And when you're listening to that original CD version, if you like, I don't know, it almost seems like one day it will all end. One day, for me, when I was a child listening to it, it was a great sadness to hear the end of One Day. Hard to explain. I could always just play it again if I wanted to. But when you're a child staring out the window, seeing the dawn come and feeling certain ways, something beautiful like music has a powerful effect on you. And One Day rounded off that compact disc quite nicely for me. So that was Bites, everyone. We'll be moving on to the next album soon enough. However, this is the early days of Skinny Puppy, when everything was coming together and becoming exceptionally beautiful. Remember to like, subscribe, that sort of thing. Catch us on the Instagram, the TikTok, and the Facebook. All of that sort of thing. Thank you, everyone, and bye for now.